Hey guys, all right, today I am going to talk to you about different cultural regions in Louisiana. Okay, so let's start out with what is cultural geography? Well, it's the study of world cultures. I'm sure you've studied several world cultures before, especially in 6th and 7th grade. So what's a culture? When I say cultural geography is the study of world cultures, what is a culture? All right, a culture is the way of life of a particular group of people. It can include their language, food, clothing, art, architecture, tools, beliefs, traditions. You have studied so many cultures before in your life. So in 6th grade, I know you studied all about the ancient cultures like the Romans and the Greeks. Okay, in 7th grade, you studied American culture mostly, right? Which you probably already knew a lot about, but maybe you didn't know as much about past American culture. Well, now we're studying Louisiana culture, which includes a big array of different groups. All right, so what's cultural diffusion? Well, cultural diffusion is the spreading of culture more widely. So all this means is how different cultures spread, and that's what we're looking at. So maybe you know about cultural diffusion because your family's actually spread their culture. Maybe you've come from another state. Maybe you've come from another country. All right, and you're spreading your culture to Louisiana, or maybe your ancestors did it. Maybe you had an ancestor that came from China, or you had an ancestor that came from Germany. Maybe your parents came from a different country or a different state. Maybe you had a parent that came from Tennessee to here and they spread their Tennessee culture to Louisiana. All right, so cultural diffusion just means spreading of cultures. All right, cultural regions. So let's talk about what a region is. A region is an area that's defined by similar features. This includes common climate, common landforms, maybe different economic opportunities. Well, it can also include cultures. So we're looking at cultural regions. Now, what I don't want you to think is that cultural regions are a mandatory set of boundary lines on a map. It's not, okay? Cultural regions can change, and then some people might not even agree on cultural regions. You can see two different maps of Louisiana on the screen right now. So, the northernmost cultural region is Sportsman's Paradise. This can also be called North Louisiana. Crossroads can be called Central Louisiana. We have southern Louisiana with Cajun country, plantation country, and greater New Orleans, but you can see on the map to the right, these could be called Acadiana, Florida parishes, and greater New Orleans. And I want you to look and you can see that plantation country and greater New Orleans on the two maps aren't even the same boundary lines, okay? So it's not a set boundary. This is just different regions that we kind of look at to see how they're similar culturally. All right, let's talk about the different regions. So we have Sportsman's Paradise first. This is that place in northern Louisiana. Sportsman's Paradise is mostly rural and it gets its name because it's known for fishing, hunting, hiking, birding, canoeing, camping, so all these different sports. The fact that it has a bunch of hills, forests, lakes, wildlife, and it has a more mild climate than southern Louisiana is a lot of the reasons these sports are so popular. When I say more mild climate, it's still hot there, it's just not as hot. Okay, and sometimes in Sportsman's Paradise, they actually get snow, just more than we do here, but still not often. All right, people, you used to have ancient mound builders here. During the prehistoric times, we have the Poverty Point culture, and we'll talk about them and their economic trading system soon. You have the Caddo and Tunica tribes that we'll also talk about. You have Anglo settling in the region. So these are people who are primarily from Scotland and Britain. Um, and then some people consider Irish part of the Anglo culture as well. Anglo culture as well. Music, you have country, you have bluegrass, you have bagpipes. Probably the people from Scotland brought that over. Religion is primarily Protestant. What Protestant means is Christian, non-Catholic. So different sects might be Baptists or Methodist or Lutheranism would be Protestant. Okay, so it's any Christian religion that's not Catholic or Russian Orthodox. Festivals. You have the Peach Festival in Ruston. You have a Catfish Festival, Catfish Festival in Winsboro. You also have a Spring Festival in Shreveport that is actually dedicated to the celebration of Asian cultures. So that's more of a new festival. You have urban areas like Shreveport, Bossier area. You have Monroe. Different foods in this region. You have fried chicken, barbecue, pork chops, chicken and dumplings, collard greens, etc. What people would usually call soul food, actually. All right, Crossroads region. This is the center of the state. You have Natchitoches, Pineville, Alexandria. You have French, Spanish, Creole, and American heritage. And we'll actually talk about this area as kind of a neutral ground during the Louisiana Purchase, when we get to the Louisiana Purchase. Um, Crossroads has an agricultural past. They have small towns, they have plantation homes. They're known for like bass fishing, hiking, hunting, bird watching, etc. And I'll talk more about Crossroads because I'll give you an example of the project you're going to do. And my example will be on Crossroads. All right, Cajun country. This is South Louisiana along the Gulf Coast. The Acadians were the first group to settle here after the Native Americans, of course, which is why the area is called Acadiana, for the Acadians. And we'll talk a little bit about the Acadians in a bit. But Acadians and Cajuns are the same thing, okay? So they have the Cajun culture here. Their food, they have spicy, black and red fish, crawfish, etc. Music is more upbeat. You have Cajun music and Zydeco music. So I can show you an example of Cajun music is this. So in Cajun music, songs are usually sung in French, and they're usually sung to a fiddle, and then eventually you're going to have the accordion coming in. Um, and then you have Zydeco, which was created by Black Creoles. It has more of a lively and upbeat rhythm. They use the fiddle and an accordion. Early Zydeco musicians actually use that metal washboard as percussion, and this is an example of Zydeco. So you hear that more upbeat sound in the background. Okay. Language. Cajun people speak mostly French and English, but honestly, in the last 100 years or so, French has been more wiped out, and you have mostly English. A lot of the younger people who consider themselves Cajun don't speak French anymore because in the early 1900s, it was kind of banned from the school. Religion, Cajuns are typically Catholic primarily, which is another Christian sect, so the Christian sect that's not Protestant. Cajuns originally were trappers and hunters, but a lot of them moved into the oil industry when the oil industry got so big in southern Louisiana. And for urban areas, you have Lafayette, you have Houma, you have Morgan City, you have Thibodaux. And let's move on to the plantation region. So plantation country, Baton Rouge, Gonzales, St. Francisville. So where we're at is plantation country. It's called plantation country because it had a lot of rich farmland, or has a lot of rich farmland, and so this was originally home to sugar, cotton, and rice plantations. We now rely heavily on the tourism industry, chemical companies, Louisiana State Universities. Probably a lot of your parents work for these different regions. Music, blues is pretty big. It has its roots in African and African American folk music, and there's a big blues festival in Baton Rouge in April. Greater New Orleans area, this is a unique blend of culture, lots of cultural diversity. You have Choctaw and Natchez tribes, you have French, Spanish, Creoles, Haitians, Africans, Anglo-American, Germans, Irish, Italians, a whole bunch of different ethnic groups living here. New Orleans is a port city, just like Baton Rouge is a port city, but is the biggest biggest and busiest port city in the South, and it largely contributed to the slave trade. So a lot of slaves were brought in through New Orleans port. Religion is blended, but you do have a lot of Catholicism. A lot of people practicing Catholicism in New Orleans, which if you've walked down the streets in New Orleans, you've probably seen Catholic churches. You have a lot of French and Spanish architecture, foods, king cake, sweet potato pie, pecan pie, beignets, gumbo, jambalaya, oysters, po' boys. All of those different foods are very popular, and a lot of them come from New Orleans. Music, you have jazz, blues. It's also the state's most urban region, so many more cities in the greater New Orleans area. Let's talk for a second about different religions and music in all of these different regions. So all of these different regions do have musics that are primarily popular, but with more globalization and more technology and things like that, the regions are becoming more similar to each other. So these different cultures are kind of blending together. into more of a mainstream culture. You especially see this with kids like your age, or even people close to my age. Um, so Louisiana is primarily Protestant and Catholic, but you do have cultural diffusion coming in, and so people who practice the Jewish faith have come in at different regions and spread that. Um, in more recent times, Buddhism and Islam are becoming more prevalent in these different regions. Music, obviously, you have jazz, blues, country, all of those styles, but all throughout the state, rock and roll is popular, gospel music's popular, and then the more popular musics of today are popular, like pop and rap and hip hop. So that we're seeing all over the state, not just in a specific region. Okay. All right, let's talk about Mardi Gras too. It's probably the biggest festival in Louisiana, probably the most widely known in Louisiana, and different groups have different ways of celebrating Mardi Gras. So Mardi Gras is a Catholic holiday. It's the day before Ash Wednesday. It actually means Fat Tuesday in French. I'm sorry, in French, and it signifies the beginning of Lent, which will end with Easter. Uh, Mardi Gras is celebrated, like I said, in different ways in different places. So I'm sure a lot of you know how Baton Rouge celebrates Mardi Gras or how New Orleans celebrates Mardi Gras. Well, you also have the Fat Tuesday run, the Courier Day Mardi Gras in Cajun country, so in Acadiana. This is an example of Cajun country Mardi Gras. So they ride on a lot of horses, they wear a lot of costumes, and let's see if I can find. This is where they're actually running and chasing a chicken. So dance for the chicken is what they're calling it right here. So they'll dance around in these costumes, and you've seen costumes probably in New Orleans Mardi Gras parades. But they will actually chase chickens on horses. You can see him dancing on horses and things like that. I have a good picture of it right here. If you look right here, this guy is in a costume actually chasing a chicken, and you can kind of see some similarities like the bright colors and the costumes. If you look right here on this Mardi Gras float in New Orleans, they're also wearing costumes. If you're interested in Mardi Gras, I do have a really good book called Mardi Gras Gumbo and Zydeco, and it has a bunch of different information on the different styles of Mardi Gras and all the symbolism behind Mardi Gras that we can talk about, or you can read if you'd like to, and then I'll talk about with you. So just let me know if you're interested in Mardi Gras, because it is a very, very interesting holiday and celebration. All right, ethnic groups. I'm not going to talk to you about ethnic groups, but I have some examples of ethnic groups right here, and you're going to do some research on these different ethnic groups in class. So I have ethnic groups like the Acadians, and we're going to talk a lot about Acadians when we talk about Evangeline. Creoles, who are the descendants of the people in French colonial and Spanish colonial, and then some Native Americans will consider themselves Creoles. African Americans, I'm sure a lot of you know, came over with the slave trade, and we'll look at where some of the first African Americans came from. And then you've got these newer ethnic groups coming in, like the Vietnamese, who come into Louisiana because it's such a similar culture to Vietnam, and it's that fishing culture, and it's that coastal community. You have Croatians who primarily live in like Plaquemines Parish, and they do oyster farming and things like that. You have Chinese immigrants coming in recently, Filipinos who also live in Plaquemines Parish. You have Czechs, Hungarians, etc. So we'll talk a lot about these in class, and you'll be researching these different ethnic groups. The last thing I want to leave you with is, if you're interested in Louisiana culture and you're interested in looking more at Louisiana tonight, you maybe could try the Louisiana Travel website, which has a lot about things to do in Louisiana, cities and regions of Louisiana, festivals and events. You can look at trip ideas if you're interested in doing things over the weekend. Maybe you want to talk to your parents and say, hey, let's go to the Louisiana Shrimp and Petroleum Festival, or Seafood Festival, or things like that. So it has a lot of very interesting things that is going on in Louisiana right now. All right, you are ready to come into class and get started on your project, which I will tell you about in class. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. All right, bye guys.